And the title in the bulletin, I am not an expert speller, but I did spell it right. Most people would think it should be T-O-O instead of T-W-O, full, but you'll understand later why it's the number 2. How many of you like breakfast? I love breakfast. It's my favorite meal of the day most of the time. And in my house, I'm the breakfast person. Part of it's because that's what I did as a kid. I helped with breakfast. Part of it is I just naturally get up earlier than Beth. And so I make pancakes 2 or 3 times a week. My kids love pancakes. I make them from scratch. So I got my ingredients. At the beginning, it was 7 ingredients, so it's a perfect number. And then I got cheap, and I split the milk, half water, half milk. So now I got 8. But still tastes almost the same. But recently, one of my kids decided they wanted to mix up the pancake batter. So I gave it directions. They'd seen me make them many times, and so I already kind of knew what I put in, what my 8 ingredients were. And when it came time for me to actually make the pancakes, to fry them up, the batter was a little thick. The first time, so I added a little water and got it right. The second time, the same thing happened. It was a little thick. And so I asked, okay, now when you measure, because it's the wet and the dry, and it's an equal amount, I wondered if maybe the dry ingredients were heaped a little, and maybe the wet wasn't all the way to the top. But to get the pancakes right, the wet and the dry ingredients have to be filled to the top. Otherwise, it doesn't turn out quite right. And so I adjusted, and my child will learn with practice to get it right, or maybe I do it wrong and it turns out right. I don't know without thinking. But I believe that if both are perfectly full, when they're measured out, the pancakes will turn out right. Christianity, I'm going to suggest today, is the same. When we get 2 major ingredients to the full, we have Christianity right. And we have a Christianity that is fulfilling to us, and we have a Christianity that is attractive to the world. But we got to be full of both. Amen. We got to be full of both. So I invite you to open your Bibles, and we're going to spend almost our entire time in one verse. And I think I can make a 3-part series on one verse. But I'm not going to do that, nor am I going to try to do it all today. Don't worry. But John 1, verse 14 is our key text today. And so we're going to just start digging into this a little bit, and then we'll put some application towards the end. But to read through it again, it says, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth." So I'm going to take it a phrase at a time. The first phrase, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. It's only, it's only a few words, less than 10. But I don't think we're going to understand this for at least another 1,000 years. This small phrase. The Word, who we know from verse 1, was God, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. We know this is talking about Jesus Christ. The God of the universe, powerful, awesome, perfect, holy, majestic, life-giving God of the whole universe, that God became flesh. Amen. To think that a God so big could be contained in a human body is a mystery to me. Right. And to think that he would want to do that is mind-boggling for the reason he chose. It could be a sermon on that phrase. Words seem so inadequate to me to describe a God who came to dwell with us. Amen. It says he became flesh, God in human form. He took on our humanity, our weaknesses, our struggles, and he dwelt with his creation. Now, I know it was almost 2,000 years ago, but people are people, and he came to dwell with people. People like us. He breathed the air we breathe. He walked on the earth we walk on. He ate the fruits and vegetables that we eat. He got tired like we do. He felt the emotions that we feel. The God of the universe became one of us and dwelt with us. It's an amazing thought. And it says, and we beheld his what? His what? Glory. We beheld his glory. Now that word for glory is in Greek the same word that is used in Greek to describe the Shekinah glory of God. And when I thought of that, I thought, wow, this is crazy. The Shekinah glory in the most holy place that one person could see. You know, whenever I put words on a page, the emotions aren't there so much as when I say them. But to me, only one person, one time a year, could go into the presence of the Shekinah glory, and God came down and revealed that glory to humanity, to you and to me. As we have record of how he did it with the people on earth, we get to see a glimpse of that glory. What an awesome privilege they had. I mean, it's crazy. What an awesome privilege we have to read through these stories, and we get to glimpse the glory that was hidden from Israel, except for one person one time a year, has been exposed and revealed and opened to us in the life of Jesus Christ. It's an amazing thing to me. The disciples and the 12, it says, we beheld his glory. Who's the we? The disciples, the 12 and the 70, the priests and the Pharisees, the people of Nazareth beheld his glory. The people of Capernaum, the people of Jerusalem, the people of Samaria, they all got to behold the Shekinah glory embodied in Jesus Christ. The people of all the cities in Galilee, all the cities in Judea. And how is his glory, this awesome glory of God, described in this verse? A couple words describe this awesome glory that was revealed to us in the life of Jesus Christ. Full of what? Grace. And truth. And so when God is revealing his glory to us, he's revealing it in two main areas: truth and grace. Grace and truth. And it says he's full. Full. Now, when I was a kid, about the same age as I told the children's story, my dad sent me out to pick some plums. We had, I think they were wild plum trees. I don't know. There is such a thing. But I went out to pick the plums. And I went out with a 5-gallon bucket, I think. It seemed big. Maybe it was only 1 gallon since I was so little. But it felt big. But what I do remember is I was picking, putting them in, and of course it starts to get fuller and fuller, and I kept picking until it was full to the top. And then as I'm walking to the house, I'm thinking, oh, this is so funny. I know what I'm going to tell Dad. And so I brought it to my dad, and I said, Dad, guess what? Guess how full it is? It's plumb full. I know. I'm still stuck with that sense of humor. If you didn't get it, I'm sorry. But I thought it was cute at the time. But it was full to the top. And that's the full that we have here, that Jesus is full of grace. All the way up. All the way up. He's full of truth. All the way up. All the way to the top. I didn't know if food coloring would... I put it together last night, one of them, and I wondered, is that going to stay colored the whole time, or is the food coloring going to settle to the bottom? It stays mixed pretty good. And so what we read in this verse is that Jesus is full of grace. For me, I'm a visual person, so I try to think of visual aids. I'm not going to fill it so full it spills, but trust me, it's full. And I want to just pick out a few examples, and then I'm going to confuse you afterwards. Okay? You ready for that? Okay, so thinking about Jesus, full of grace, and this word for grace is charitos. It's given more than 100 times in the New Testament. It's like he used lots and lots and lots. It's a word for grace. It's a word for grace that we find in Ephesians 2, where it says that we're saved by grace through faith. It's the same word. And there's lots of stories I could choose from, but when I think of Jesus showing grace, one story that comes to mind is when the paralytic is dropped through the roof. Okay, he's paralyzed. But what does Jesus tell him first? Your sins are forgiven. Okay? Jesus is showing more grace in that statement than he did in healing him. And the reason I believe that guy was in his condition was because of his sin. And that increased the guilt that he had. And so when Jesus forgave him, when Jesus gave him that grace, he was full of grace in demonstrating that fullness to a guy that had probably been plagued by guilt most of his life. Another story I think of, and maybe it's because I'm a pastor, I don't think that should make much difference, but it's a story of Peter. And Jesus, and I think maybe I identify with disciples because I see myself as kind of we're all disciples of Jesus, I hope. But Jesus tells him, Peter, you're going to deny me. No way. I'm never going to deny you. But Jesus said it. He didn't believe it. And so, of course, we know he does deny Jesus. And I have denied Jesus, have you not? And that's why this story speaks to me, because after he's resurrected and then he talks to Peter, and 3 times he denied Jesus, 3 times Jesus said, feed my lambs. Or do you love me, Do you love me? 3 times. You know, when I mess up, I feel like I don't deserve to be able to keep on going. Okay? And so I love to see this grace of Jesus to someone who just totally, I can't imagine doing anything worse than denying God flat out 3 times, even with cursing at the end. And yet he's given the privilege of remaining a disciple and one of the leaders in his church. That's a lot of grace to me. So those are just a couple examples of grace. And I know some people get more excited about the grace cup than maybe the truth cup, and some get more excited about the truth cup than the grace cup. So I'm going to make everybody happy and fill up the truth cup now. Jesus was full of truth. And when I think of truth, there's lots of things. I could think of the Beatitudes as Jesus is declaring truths that were new to them. But when I think of truth, sometimes I think of Jesus being a little bit hardcore. And so my mind goes to stories like when he's rebuking the Pharisees and the lawyers. Is he telling them the truth? He's hardcore with these guys. Basically saying he tells them you're full of dead men's bones. You look good on the outside, and that's all you care about, but inside you're full of dead men's bones. That doesn't seem a lot too gracious to me. That seems a little harsh. But it's very truthful, isn't it? That was their condition. And so Jesus is speaking the truth to these religious leaders that have led Israel astray, that have prevented people from receiving him as the Messiah by their teachings, and he speaks really strong to them. Another time I think of Jesus and truth is when he goes into the temple and he says, "Get out of here. My Father's house is going to be a house of" what? A house of prayer. I believe in prayer. And that's why I think we need to have a meeting where we're just praying. Because my guess is if we add up all the prayers and all our services all week, we might get up to 15 minutes. I think we need a time to pray. Jesus called his Father's house a house of prayer. And I would encourage people to come and join us that can. You can pray at home, I know that. But I also know when Beth and I have prayed separate many times, and we haven't had an answer, we come together, we pray, and so many times when we've come together, we've gotten an answer almost instantly. Am I telling the truth, Beth? And so sometimes we wonder, why did we wait so long till we prayed together? There's something that happens and allows God, and I don't understand this. I'm going to ask Jesus about it someday. But when we come together to pray, things happen that don't otherwise happen, even when we're all praying at home. Amen. I believe this. I've seen it. And if you read in Acts, they came to the temple, it says to pray. And so Jesus is casting out these guys. He's telling a truth. This place has been desecrated by money laundering, by you guys just wanting an unholy cause in my house. Get out. He's telling the truth, isn't he? They had made a mess of it, and he had to get it straightened out. And so when I think of truth in Jesus, those stories come to mind. Now I'm going to confuse you. I can't think of one story in Jesus' life that wasn't full of grace and truth. Because as I think about these stories, I can't come up with a story in Jesus' life that wasn't full of both. And sometimes one side, as I've given, is a little more evident than the other side. But when Jesus forgives a paralytic dropped through the roof, and he shows grace, he is also declaring truth. You're a sinner. If he wasn't a sinner, Jesus wouldn't have said, I forgive you. And so Jesus is dealing with the truth of this guy's condition at the same time he's showing him grace. Does that make sense? Jesus knows that this man is in this condition because of the way he lived. And he's not like trying to pamper this guy and like, oh, I know you've tried really hard. No, he says, your sins are forgiven. You're a sinner. A mixture, truth and grace. When Peter is reinstated, why is it 3 times? It's to remind Peter of his overconfidence and his own love for Jesus before. Peter needs to be humbled. And Jesus, in his grace of restoring Peter, is at the same time reminding him to not trust himself, but to trust how Jesus sees his heart. Amen. And so he's mixing both. He's mixing the truth and reminding Peter and humbling Peter while he's bestowing grace on Peter at the same time. Rebuking the Pharisees. We know as Adventists, Revelation 3:19, who does God rebuke? Those he loves. If he didn't love the Pharisees, would he be rebuking them? No. And these Pharisees, this is later in Jesus' ministry, and they have been refusing him. He has been talking, and he's been using a normal voice. And now to get their attention, he's shouting. Okay, now I'm not saying he's shouting, but with his words and his language, it's getting more and more bold, more and more strong, because they haven't listened before. Beth read a book and shared this principle with me that I think is right. The opposite of love is not hate. It's indifference. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. When we just don't care anymore. So the fact that Jesus is addressing these guys, to me, shows he doesn't hate them. He still has a heart of love for them, and he's trying again, and he's just got to get stronger. And did people respond? Maybe there weren't many, but there were priests that turned to Jesus' side. And maybe it was the message at this time that got them to turn. And so the truth was given from a heart of grace. If he didn't care, he would have just left them alone. So he had grace for them even in his rebuke. And cleansing the temple, it was a strong action to show the perversion of the use of the temple, which was the truth. But you know what? In the next verses it says the lame and blind come to Jesus. And it even says where they come to Jesus. You know where it is? In the temple. So if Jesus was not, if his motive was not one of grace, they wouldn't have wanted to be around Jesus. And the kids start singing, and it makes the religious leaders mad. So we have Jesus clearing out the temple, but in the manner that he does it, those who are observing are somehow seeing this guy's not a madman. He's not bipolar, okay? And he's just switching from truth, get out of here, and then swinging the other way to grace. Oh, now I'm graceful in 5 minutes. He's not bipolar. He's full of both at the same time. And it was his grace. My house should be a place where people can seek after God, and it's not that anymore. I care enough about people to get it in order. And so even in this act of truth, we can see Jesus bestowing grace at the same time. Because he's full of both all of the time. Now I want to get to one other key text, 2 Corinthians 3:18. 2 Corinthians 3:18. I don't know if this was a verse I needed. Yesterday, my whole sermon that I had been working on during the week disappeared from my computer. So I had to start over yesterday. And in starting over, this verse came to me. 2 Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 18. It says, "But we all, with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of God." And we just read in John 1:14 that we get to see God's glory in Jesus. So we get to behold the glory of God, and we get to see it in a mirror. Now, they couldn't see it directly like the Shekinah glory in the most holy place, but indirectly through Jesus, like a mirror, it was being revealed, a perfect image of the glory of God in human form, lived out in a human life like we're living. So we beheld this glory of the Lord. We are being transformed into what? Into the same image. I was just having baptismal class during Sabbath school, and I was explaining, we went through the great controversy idea, and how the image of God had been perfect in Adam, and that through sin, that image has been marred to the point where we have the atrocities and the troubles you and I deal with today. And so we are being transformed into that image that Adam had, that image that he got from God, made in God's image. God is trying to transform you and me to be in this same image. Amen? We can't do it without a transformation from him. We can't do this on our own. This is a God thing. that we are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as by the Spirit of God. And so if we're going to be transformed by God, if that's His goal, to transform you and me into the image of God, and we see His glory in Jesus Christ, full of grace, full of truth, if we are going to be in this image, we are going to be what? We're going to be full. TWO full. Full of the two. Full of grace, full of truth. If we are reflecting His image to the world. Does this make sense? God is transforming His image. That's His goal in you and me. And if we are being transformed, we will be full of grace. This represents us. Full of grace and full of truth. I hope you guys have your shoes on. Thank you for noticing, James. I hope you have your shoes on because some might feel stepped on in the next 10 minutes. Okay, as we apply this to us. We know what God Jesus is. We know He's trying to make us in His image. We know He wants to make us full of both. And that it's a transformation only He can do. And are we being transformed into the same image, full of grace and full of truth? And He's wanting us to show the world His character. He left, so He's left us to reveal this same image to the world. And sometimes we struggle, don't we? Sometimes we struggle to be full of both. Sometimes we struggle to be full of either. And we tend to lean, this is what I see in our human condition, and I've seen it in my own life, we tend to lean towards being full of one or full of the other. And I don't know if this is a left brain, right brain thing, and if you even know what I'm talking about. Some of us are very logical. Some of us are naturally more emotional. I know a woman who's walking out now, Beth, she tends to be a little bit on the more emotional. I tend to be a little bit more on the logical. Okay? God's just wired us this way. There's nothing wrong with that. But we have a tendency as Christians to be happy, to be filled up, and focus on what naturally gets filled. I don't know if I'm making any sense. But for us that are logical, to be filled with truth makes a lot of sense. And it really appeals to us. Okay? Grace, and I'm not saying grace is just emotional, but some of us are more inclined towards grace. Okay? But we want to be full of both, amen? And so that means that God is going to be challenging us to get out of our comfort zone, which is to be filled with the other, to be full of both. And so those of us that tend to be a little more eager to be filled with truth, He's trying to pour in that we would be full of grace towards other people. Those of us that are naturally a little more gracious towards other people, and that's more natural to us, He's trying to pour some truth and to get us full so that we can be full of both. When I was younger, in my young days, back in my 20s, in late teens, I thought I was pretty full of truth. I don't think I'm as full of truth today as I thought I was back then. Because we as Adventists, we have created our own problem, I believe. In that we have packaged truth into this nice, neat package called 28 Fundamental Beliefs. And if I'm going to measure my life based on truth with that definition, I'm full. because I agree and teach and support every single one of the Seventh-day Adventist 28 fundamental beliefs. But if I'm going to start defining truth outside of that neat little package, then I find out my cup's not as full as I thought. Because God reveals the truth in my own heart, and sometimes the truth in my own heart is that I have idols in my life. Sometimes the truth in my own heart is that I have things that I want more than God. And that's what I mean by idols. Sometimes when I look at the truth of my own heart, I realize my priorities are not right. Sometimes when I look at the truth in my own heart, I see things that I don't even want to tell you. Things that are ugly. And then I realize, am I really full of truth? I'm not as full as I thought. Because I didn't even see those things before. Now I see them. But these are things outside of our neat little box of 28 fundamental beliefs. I seem pretty full when I stick with the box. If I start really thinking about the truth of how I treat people, the truth about how I think, the truth about what I don't say, but's in my heart, now I'm not as full. Now I need the grace of God, and now I need to say, God, pour some more truth into me. And I think that's what David is talking about in Psalm 139. This is the last verse we'll look at. Psalm 139, verses 20. I love Psalm 139. It's one of my favorite chapters. Verses 23 and 24, where David, who, do you think doctrinally he had it all right? Who thinks that he had it right? I think he had it right. Doctrinally, he was probably just fine. We know in his life he made some really bad choices. But David, who I think had a good theology, we would say it was a perfect theology, or at least close, he says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. See if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. David knew his heart didn't know the truth of his own heart. And he was crying out to God, God, show me the truth. So do we want to know the truth outside of this nice little box we make of 28 fundamental beliefs? Do we want to know that truth? I hope that we do. I hope that we do. We read a book to our boys as they were growing up, and in it taught Beth and I a lesson. You know, we learned from our kids' books. They were early teens or juniors age. And the book said, if you fail a test, don't worry about it. It's just showing you what's true. You didn't know as much as you thought. So just be glad that you know what's true. And for you and I in our lives of Christianity, we fail tests sometimes, don't we? That God is bringing to us. Don't despair. Just say, God, thanks for showing me the truth. The truth about who I am. I didn't even know that before. Thanks for showing me what's true about me. Are we really hungering to know what's true outside of our little box? Now, I don't know what you're going to think of this. I don't really care. If it's true, I got to share it. Okay? I'm going to try to share truth with grace. Try to be full of both. Okay. Blue representing truth. If we are full of truth as a church, only half full of grace, how much better are we than a church down 42nd Street? And I've never been to any of them, but I picked that because I drive by 5 or 6 of them almost every day. And they're full of grace and half full of truth. Do we have anything to boast about? I see a young man shaking his head no. He gets it. Are we any better than a church down the road if we're only half full of grace but we have truth? Now, I believe that box, those 28 fundamental beliefs are important. I have taught them around the world, and I will continue to teach them. And I will support the evangelistic series we have, okay? But if we are a church that is proclaiming present truth, and we are only half full of grace, are we really giving people what they need? Are we really showing Jesus' image well? Are we showing Jesus' image any better than the church that they may have came from if it was full of grace and only half full of truth? We're not showing the image any better. I want us to be a church that is full of truth, but also full of grace. Amen. And unfortunately, I have to tell you the reputation this church has and visitors, I don't want to scare you away if we have some visitors. Jesus is transforming this church, okay? So give them some grace. Amen. The reputation this church has is one that focuses on truth, is a little bit weak on grace. And this is the reputation I hear outside of this church. I come to this church not necessarily believing that. I like to start with a fresh slate everywhere I go. But I'm starting to think the reputation maybe has been well earned. But God, we read in 2 Corinthians 3:18, He is transforming us into His image if we will allow that. And what we tend to do, friends, is if I am the grace-oriented person, then I can look over at the truth-oriented person, and what do I look at? Do I look at the truth cup or the grace cup? I look at the grace cup, I see them only half full, and what are my thoughts towards them? Yeah, you want to fill them up, and if they resist, then I resent them. And you can even go to despising them. I could be a person on the other side full of truth. I look over, man, they should know better than that. They've had opportunities to know the truth and they don't know. They don't seem to care about truth. All I see is a truth cup. I don't look at the other cup that's probably fuller than mine. And I reject them maybe. I put them at a distance. And I look down on them. And God is calling us to something much better. God is calling us to something much higher. And that is to be so concerned that we want to be like Jesus, that we are looking at both. And saying, Jesus, I want to be too full. I want to be full of grace. I want to be full of truth. I want to be full of both. How many of you want to be full of both cups today? How many of you want God to show you the truth about your own heart? They may not be so pretty, but you want to be filled with truth, and so God, just show me. Give me the test. Show me I failed. Show me what I got to learn. Do you want to be full of truth? Do you want to be full of grace? Grace towards others. Because in October, September, we're going to have visitors. We'll have visitors before then. But I pray that God will transform us individually and us as a church into one that's like Jesus, full of grace and full of truth.